Welcome back to Tech, Tesla, and Trends. Tonight we're following up on Module 1, the long-term vision and the awareness of trends, but in particular cost curves. Cost curves are a trend that if you are aware of as a manufacturer, you're going to be able to produce the most profitable product in the marketplace. With Tesla, what we are seeing is that mindset has come home to roost in spades. We look at the profitability of the Model Y versus any one of like the Toyota Corolla or something like that. It's a 5x difference between the two currently, where Tesla has a $9,500 and Toyota has, I think, $1,700 for their per unit profit. These cost curves are part of how you determine whether or not you're profitable with your widgets. And in Tesla's case, there's a lot of widgets that they're making. They have to maintain an understanding, and they do so through their customized app that each employee has access to see if the activities that they are involved in are making a difference in a positive or a negative. Obviously, if you're making negative impacts left and right, you're probably not going to be retained. But if you're making mistakes and learning from those and then correcting those and bringing that into a more profitable line, that's an experience, an opportunity, a learning moment. And those should be not only sought after, but rewarded in many ways, because oftentimes the experiment is what teaches you something. So with cost curves, there's a couple of them. You have your marginal cost, and the average fixed cost, and the average variable cost, and your average total cost of your products and or services. Those really do have an impact to what occurs in manufacturing. Ultimately, it is important that we understand how those impact the operational nature of your company and the run rate of your production lines. Other factors that impact our cost curves are the raw materials, the labor, the overhead, and then other outside services. Plus, we also have to keep in mind that there are, in cost accounting, there's 6 different types of costs that are associated there. You've got your direct costs. Those specifically are the items that from the raw material to the point where you sell the product. You can track it to an individual widget. Your indirect costs are tied to the production of those widgets as a whole, but they're not specific to an individual widget. The fixed costs, those must be paid regardless. You lease a machine to make those widgets. That lease has a fixed cost associated with it. Then you have operating costs. Those typically your rent, utilities, but those are not associated with the individual production of those widgets. They're the day-to-day things, the management fees, the cost of operating, essentially. There's also the opportunity cost, and that's really not an actual cost that is associated with, you're going to have that on the bottom line. But that's one that occurs where you're understanding that we chose to go with X rather than Y first, because X would fundamentally enable the production of Y. And in the case of Tesla, that's true. Model X did help fund the 3 and Y production. The next cost that you have to keep in mind is your sunk costs. And those are things you bought something 10 years ago and it's still part of your default. It's the amount of money you've spent for a certain product line or for a certain building or for a certain widget production facility. Controllable costs are the short-term expenses. They can be employee bonuses, office supplies, advertising costs, things like that. The baseball team that wanders in off the street and asks for a sponsorship or some other charitable donation you're making. Those are your controllable costs. They typically are made by a single individual and are controllable, hence the name. Really wraps up the overall what those cost curves are. As you think about it, you can see why an awareness of cost curves is part of an awareness of overall broader trends. If the cost of employment goes up for a particular area, or the supply chain costs of your raw materials go up, or if your utility costs go up, that's part of your overhead. Perhaps you have an outside contractor and all of their supply chain costs or labor costs have gone up. These things are all part of those cost curves, and how they blend together is an awareness that you have to maintain when you are seeking to produce products at the most profitable rate, which is actually what matters, I think, more than in cost of production, but your actual what you get in return for that production. This is where Tesla shines. Tesla is able to make a widget, a car, a battery, whatever it may be, at a cheaper and more profitable rate than any of their competitors. Many times you will hear people saying that competition is coming. Well, the competition may arrive, but the competition is still, like in Toyota's case, for every car they make, they are not making as much as Tesla made for every car. Over time, that adds up in an exponential nature. Understanding that cost curve intricacies makes a difference for you as you're seeking to understand how Tesla operates and why it is such a fundamentally different company than many others. Due to the DNA level vision that exists within Tesla, they don't just build one widget the exact same way every single day. They are continually looking at these cost curves and material costs and labor costs and everything else and seeking to tweak it and how it fits in with another widget, and potentially even to eliminate the need for that widget to exist within the production line. As Elon has identified very properly, no part is the best part. No process is the best process. And many people will not understand why that statement relates here. What I'm trying to make clear is that if you don't have a cost associated with something, it doesn't impact that bottom line. So if you didn't need to make something, i.e. with the Cybertruck, if you don't need to paint it, it doesn't go to the cost portion of your balance sheet. Being aware of cost curves matters, and being aware of how you impact those cost curves individually as your employees and as a company. It's more than just a very boring accounting process. This should be iterative, as Tesla is illustrating. At times, they are making changes to their products on an hourly basis. Some of the stories that we've heard from Joe Justice and other former Tesla employees are as accurate as I believe they are. There are times where they're making changes multiple times an hour, and they're still selling those products because they are able to figure out how that impacts the overall cost curve, the overall change of the design, and that is impressive when it hits the bottom line. Awareness of how those materials cost out and how the process costs out at an employee level, how they work together, changes how Tesla is able to compete in the marketplace. And there are no other companies that I'm aware of that are utilizing that same level of awareness of cost curves in their overall vision of product manufacturing. We'll leave that for you tonight, and we'll talk to you in the comments.